What are some of the more current disclosure issues companies are struggling with?
In the last few years, we have seen a lot of cases, some to do with off-balance sheet obligations. For example, a company had signed a side agreement with another party to fund operations or certain financial obligations that had direct or indirect consequences to the organization. Although those agreements may be oral, but they need to be disclosed. We have seen related party transactions or transactions that would trigger the conflict of interest that had not been described carefully. Sometimes we have seen change in auditors or change in directors, board of directors. As something as important and required by the SEC, they fail to be disclosed. So there are many cases. There's no shortage of them. I would encourage people to look through some of these lessons learned and be sensitive to these items. And again, if it's an event that is important enough that needs to go through the board, and if an event that involves your SEC counsel, they should be considered for disclosure.
So how can companies prevent and detect these issues in time?
Well, it is, and again, getting buy-in from the top and look at these events carefully and have a mechanism to track these events so that when it comes to financial reporting, when it comes to complying with the 8K requirement, there is a tracker in place to come back and say, we should now seriously consider these events for disclosure because we have gone through the discussion phase into implementation phase. And having these policies and people involved and be sensitive enough to look at them early in the process is a very important distinction to making sure that that program will be successful. Because when you look at these events carefully and you take a very serious mode in disclosing them, even though you may decide not to disclose them, but the thought process of considering them for disclosure, and that's the criteria. Consider them for disclosure is an important one. And once you consider them, you have your 80% to the finish point. And although you may not disclose them and you have concluded not to disclose them, is irrelevant. And getting those people involved up front, including your auditor and your SEC counsel, will make that process very successful.